The City of Victorville City Council adjourned meeting to order. The first item is public comment. I do have two cards. Dorothy Miller.
Good afternoon. I have a few problems here. These street closures are horrible. To run around the city with this mess we're in. Now, years ago, Mr. Stevens had a radio program, and he had on there things that we could do. And I said, well, we really need Sycamore straightened out. Can't do that. He promised me it would be done. I said, well, I can draw a straight line. Nothing happened, as usual. Then we go to storm drains. We have a storm drain over on Sycamore near 395 where those homes were built. They had to put in storm drain. Where does a storm drain go? Nowhere. It goes nowhere. All it does is collect mosquitoes for the neighbors there. And I don't think this is right. I feel we should get these storm drains in. We need to get this city on track. It's not going to get on track with no money. So let's quit spending so much at the base and all these other things we do. We need to get this going in the right direction. And we need to get somebody that can take care of all this water runoff. I mean, over on Sycamore, that water, the ditch that goes down and then goes down across the back of our fence is 6 feet deep. And all that water comes down, goes down behind our fence and down into the neighbor's yard. And this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. These storm drains should have been put in there years ago if we had a city manager that would take care of things. Thank you.
Norm Miller.
Council members, my name is Norman Miller. I'm speaking on behalf of the Golden Triangle Ad Hoc Committee. And the city's always said a couple things I've heard over the years. One is that they're business friendly. And the other is that they think the most important thing in the city is the police, the sheriff, and the fire. Well, I want to comment on that a little bit. I could probably save this for later, but I'll do it now. We don't have a paramedic and all the firemen at the Sunset Ridge Station. And I remember somebody saying that they voted for going to the county to get the paramedics in here. Well, we don't have a paramedic. But I do see that we can subsidize the golf course and we can give away free passes for the golf course. Well, I'd like to see that money, excuse me, go over to the fire department, 315, so we can get that finished off. And I have another little problem. I know it has nothing to do with this, but the county says they can't do it because they don't have your money, but they have money. And I see they're opening up a huge fire station down at 395 and by the pilot thing there. That's twice as big as our station. There's hardly anybody there. I know there's supposed to be somebody soon. But we need to get the full crew in Sunset Ridge because we got a lot more houses now than we ever did when we first planned that. And maybe they're not all full of people, but they still have fires, whether there's people living in them or not. They seem to get the fires. So I'd like to see if we could do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a revision and an urgency item.
Mayor Cabrialis, in order to add the item pursuant to Government Code 54954.2B2, you need to make a finding that the item arose after the posting of the agenda and there's immediate need. My understanding is this is a item to deal with an emergency situation under Government Code 54956.5. And As to the facts and circumstances, I think I defer to Mr. Cox. Apparently, it's a result of the storm and some damage done that was made apparent. There was some damage done which was apparent after the posting of the agenda, and I believe, Mr. Cox, you have some information about the extent of the damage, the timing, and the fact that we need to take some immediate action on this.
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor and Council. The Fire Department, Public Works Department, Engineering Department all did an assessment of the damage that was done by the rains. And because of the accumulated damage that was occurring, it was necessary for me, as the Director of Emergency Services for the City of Victorville, to declare an emergency. I did that on Friday, and this, for a lot of reasons, it also allows to purchase goods and other items necessary in order to reduce or take care of the emergency if possible. The codes that we have and the state codes, as well as our own local disaster preparedness program, provides that the manager may declare the existence of a local emergency. However, when that is done, it must be submitted to the City Council. The City Council, if they agree with the city manager's determination, then must adopt a resolution confirming the existence of the local emergency. It is not required that the council adopt that, but it is required for the council to adopt that for the notice of the emergency to continue, and for Victorville to then be, eligible to receive either federal or state funding if either is made available as a result of the emergency. We are still continuing to put together, I was looking for it, we're still continuing to put together the list of the damages, but I know that the last list that I saw exceeded $5 million. And Sean or Amr, do you have any later? I don't. Okay. So that's what we have. So we will continue to put that together as we complete the assessment of La Mesa. That figure will probably increase.
We have to
Take a vote to add
item.
the item pursuant to the code section and the facts that apparently it arose late Friday and there's immediate need to pursue funding.
I'll so move.
Second? I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I do have a card here from Norm Miller, who wants to speak on the urgency item.
I don't want to be nasty, but am I supposed to speak before or after the vote? Normally. I seem to always be called up after the vote, which really means that whatever I have to say doesn't mean anything.
There's been no vote on the action
But
taken
anyway, this
right
has
now.
nothing to do with the vote, because I agree with the vote. But what I did want to mention, and again, this is the Golden Triangle, my wife mentioned it a little bit. What she's talking about is Baywood and Sycamore. Everything north of there pretty much is dirt, open desert. Everything south of there, including the new housing that's been built down by the aqueduct area, is all paved. A lot of that water that has always gone down the ditch through there ends up coming out at Sequoia and Topaz. And it's always come out somewhere in that general area. And with it comes a lot of sand. Well, now that those new housing and streets have been put in, that water has increased tremendously. Now, my understanding is that when you build houses and or development, the water can go the way it's always gone, but it can't be more than it was before. Well, more to me, my wife mentioned it, I think her figures were a little bit wrong, but I looked at it Friday, and the part that goes behind our property was about 8 feet wide and about, I would say, maybe 6 inches deep. And of course, it shallows out as it gets to the edges because it's like this. Well, after Friday's rain, or during Friday's rain, there was so much water coming down there where the water turns and goes down the neighbor's property. It's about 16 inches deep, the stream bed is. The water went over the embankments there. and flooded their property, flooded the property north of them, and flooded the property just north of our property. It didn't hurt our property any, but it's getting everybody down there. That's part of the problem. People are getting flooded. But the thing that you're not realizing is that all of that water carries sand with it, and all that sand is ending up on Bear Valley Road. And every time it rains, you're coming out there and cleaning that mess up. And I asked you at the last meeting, how much does it charge, how much is it costing you to keep cleaning up those rains as compared to putting in a storm drain? We pay so much a month. Everybody in the Golden
Miller, you
Triangle
have 30
pays so much a month for storm drains, and we have not had any storm drain help from the city at all. And I don't think we've had much of any help from the city in the Golden Triangle since we annexed in there, except for street sweeping. So I think you need to look at that and get some things straightened out here, because you're not going to clean up your mess on Bear Valley Road until you clean up the mess on, I believe it's Mesa Linda and Topaz, because that's where all your sand is coming. A lot of your sand is coming from there, if not all of it. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, for point of clarification, the council has not acted on the item yet. They just acted to add the item to the agenda. That's the only vote that's been taken so far.
The revision is a written communication for item number 3.
Is there going to be action on the urgency item? I believe, Mr. Cox, are you looking for ratification of your designation of a state of emergency?
I added that as item number 6.
Okay, you're going to add it.
So we can act on it, yes. Item number 2 is a request to award a contract to High Desert Underground for construction of Bear Valley Road and 3rd Avenue water line relocation in the amount of $55,640.
Mayor Cabriales, I'm going to abstain from this vote as our firm provides the insurance for High Desert Underground.
I'll move the item.
Second.
Item number 3 is discussion of a special January 25th, and there was one on the 21st and then the 25th for VBWRA. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. On Thursday last, there was a special meeting of VBWRA at which there was several items of interest for the city of Victorville that were on the agenda. Items 7 and 8, and I have given you a memo, but I'll kind of touch on the main points. Items 7 and 8 dealt with both the sludge agreement and the JPA. We had been attempting to get another SAC meeting, Strategic Advisory Committee members. That would be the members, the city managers, and actually First District Supervisor would be the members of that SAC. We were trying to get them to meet such that we could continue to move the sludge agreement and the JPA forward. Just backing up a little bit, the last version of the JPA was considered at a December meeting of the SAC. That was the first meeting in several months where the manager of the VBWRA had attended, and he was tasked with introducing language into the JPA that would address his concerns. Unfortunately, upon reviewing the changes that he was proposing, it seemed like the JPA took maybe 2 or 3 steps backwards, quite frankly. We were unsuccessful in getting a SAC meeting organized in time for the special meeting. So all we could do was to update the VBWRA board at Thursday's meeting while retaining hope that we would still be able to get a meeting of the SAC members prior to a Monday meeting that they were having. I think that was the special meeting. I should say I think the regular board meeting was on Thursday. Also at the meeting on the 21st, the agreement for VVWRA to provide the initial treatment service for the early startup of Dr. Pepper. And I should clarify that the startup flows are not process waste. This would be just simply flushing out the system and testing the system. And there would be in the order of 1.3 million gallons associated with that. Then later on there would be process, so it's a mixture of all of those. VVWRA, the general manager, and Reggie Lamson and myself met. We worked out all of the details of that agreement. We mimicked the Atalanto standby agreement, and that was brought before the board at the 21st meeting, and it was in fact approved unanimously with some minor corrections. I've seen the minor corrections just today, and everything looks good. We'll be bringing that before the City Council for your approval then on Tuesday of next week, February 2nd, I believe. And just to update a little bit further, there was another meeting yesterday, and again, there was the sludge agreement and the JPA were on the agenda in the event that we had been able to meet, the SAC had been able to meet and move those agreements forward. Unfortunately, we've just had a very, very difficult time getting the schedule of the 4 members to coincide. That looks like it will not happen until February 8th, unfortunately. In the meantime, we had submitted to all of the members the last version of the JPA that we felt comfortable with. There was one section that was still a point of contention. We had proposed 2 different versions of it, so we were asking the SAC to give consideration to the JPA, and we believe everybody's on board with the JPA with the exception of this one section, and we're simply saying pick A or B. One of them deals with the capacity issue, where the city would agree to give up a percentage of capacity that it currently owns after diverting, with the exception of the capacity that we own, that we inherited from the closure of George Air Force Base. The other is just a different way of providing a little bit more time benefit for VVWRA in the event that we divert flows to the new wastewater treatment plant. Returning flows can only go back at a rate of 300,000 gallons per day in a 1-year period, which means if we divert 1.5 million gallons, it will take us 5 years at the quickest, at the highest rate, before we could reoccupy that capacity. And we believe that's probably the one that addresses VVWRA's concerns the best. Their issue is one of timing. That was sent out yesterday. I've had no responses yet, but the indication from the board yesterday was that they still think the Strategic Advisory Committee should meet, and we have we're trying to get that February 8th date on everybody's schedule for that meeting. And that's everything up to date. Questions?
Jim, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that it's interesting. I've been involved in this for 1 year, trying to get a sludge agreement. Still not sure. I'm still not sure what the issues were, but we have given in to what we don't necessarily believe it's in our best interest, but possibly it's in the best interest of all the members, and so we've given where we can, and we have an agreement now that needs to be approved, or kind of forget it. We don't, with the sludge agreement, as a unit mayor indicated to the VVWRA board, we reached a point of no return, and so we're constructing our own provision, our own plan to take care of the sludge. We still would like to have a sludge agreement because you never know if there's a failure, and it's good to have the backup. But there's still a feeling somehow that we have to have the sludge agreement. We do not. I think it would be good to have it. I think it would be good insurance to have it. It doesn't hurt anyone, but we're moving ahead. I've always said, since I got involved, that there's something more. I don't understand what it is, but there was some reason to believe that somehow by building the plant, there was a diversion of the sewage, and therefore it was going to cost, the other members were going to have to pay more. And recently, the representative from the county brought up the fact that, well, when the city of Victorville diverts, his residents have to pay more. He's not sure he can support it. Well, that's not really true, but if it is, then the county could never vote to build the Hesperia plant or the Apple Valley plant because somebody has to build it, and that's going to cost more. And then there's the personnel to treat it, and that's going to cost more. So it's an odd kind of an argument that they put forth, and we kind of are at the point that we believe they ought to vote on it, but if there has to be one more meeting, we'll have the meeting in February, but after that, we believe it should go directly to the legislative bodies of each of the individuals with a letter from the mayor requesting that they vote it up or vote it down. Well, it's time to vote on it. And time for discussion has long been passed.
And I agree with that. Item number 4.
Mayor Carey, I'll
Yes.
ask to items 4 and 5. I'll have to recuse myself. City manager, the city attorney has determined that I have a conflict of interest because I reside on the golf course. I provide legal services to, so.
4 and 5 for me, too.
The same would be true certainly of Mr. Cox and Councilmember Rothschild, however, not with respect to 5. There's no economic interest on 5. Terry has apparently membership on the men's club that may have a direct effect on it. Jim, I'm not sure what your role is, but certainly, Councilmember Rothschild, I think you would have a conflict with respect to item 4, and I believe Mr. Cox, you would as well.
So the ruling is that
Just because they live,
the manager is conflicted on this issue then?
That is correct.
For the manager?
To err on the side of caution, I believe that the FPPC would find a potential conflict based on the potential of an economic interest. You're residing on the golf course, and we're considering contracts to essentially operate and maintain. If those contracts were limited purely to maintenance, there may be an exception, but anything beyond pure maintenance to be considered by this council could be deemed to be a conflict of interest by the FPPC.
All right, if that's the ruling, I certainly will abide by it. I was under the impression that since I was simply putting forth a proposal, which was a policy issue of the council, that they would, and I haven't even been putting it together, the staff has been doing that. I'm glad I really haven't been involved at this point then. But I thought there was a management exception for a management issue, for management subjects.
Not with respect to an item like this. You're a public official. You reside on a golf course. This directly affects potentially the management and operation of that golf course and may impact the economic enhancements to that golf course, which could directly be deemed to be a financial impact to you.
Right.
Certainly, I don't see a problem with item number 5, but I do see
I
a
don't
problem.
see how, but
Andre, just because they live,
Unfortunately, that is correct. If you recall, several years ago, we had the same issues come up with respect to the water wells, and FPPC deemed them to have a conflict because they lived on the golf course, regardless of the fact that we were just dealing with irrigation of the golf course. Not my rules. That's the FPPC rules and the statutes on economic conflicts of interest. I'd err on the side of caution and suggest they not participate in the decision-making.
item number 4, our deputy city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members.
you live
Well,
near the golf course?
I do not live near the golf course. I live in Eagle Ranch, if that's
Close
important.
enough. You'll have to be.
Mr. Mayor, members, remaining members of the council, we have had received a request from an individual that lives in the valley to take over operation of West Winds, and we have spoken with the individual on a couple of occasions trying to work out how that might look. And through the course of those discussions and in discussions with staff members, decided that rather than trying to to lease only one facility that would be then in direct competition with the city facility. And that could pose a problem for us, that we should, in fact, come to the council with a request to at least go out for a request for proposals that could include both golf courses. We foresee that it could involve firms that want to market them differently, but ultimately lease or operate both facilities sort of in concert with each other, complementary to each other. And in exploring those options, I asked our purchasing manager, John Mendiola, to put together a series of options to go out as a request for proposals. And at this time, if it pleases the council, I'd request that he come down and kind of run through what those options are and obtain any input that the council may have at this time. At this point, it is just a draft request for proposals.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, distinguished councils. The reason why I'm here today is, as the Deputy City Manager had stated, is to go over what we want to put out on the street. It's a draft right now, so there is some finer details that we still need to complete on it. But as you look at your package that was given to you, Section 2, the scope of work, the city's looking at both golf courses, and you go to page 2-2, which is the second page, and you look under Section 2, there's proposal formats. There's 5 different options there for you to get your input on. So staff is looking for that input to see what direction you'd want us to go. If there's anything else you are looking at that you don't see here presented before you that we might be able to entertain and put as an additional option. But let me review those options for you right now. Option A would be a full-blown lease, and that would entail a firm coming in and taking over all operations, all maintenance of both courses, including the maintenance yards, all the driving ranges, the concessions, the banquet facilities, the pro shops, the whole 9 yards. Option B would be just a firm coming in and just taking over the operations only, which would include your banquet facilities, your concessions, the pro shop, and the city will still maintain. That's on option D when we go. So option B would be just operations only, and the city would still maintain all the equipment and still maintain the courses. Option C would be just the vice versa. The opposite of that would where the firm would come in and just take care of the courses via the maintenance and the equipment and the yards, and the city would run the operation still. The concessionaire would still be there, and the city would run the pro shops and thus forth. Option D would be just like a full-blown lease in option A, but it would restrict, with the exception of restricting the concessions. We would still have our current concessionaire in there, but this firm could come in and just take over the operations of just the golf course facilities and the pro shops and things like that, but without the exception of that concessionaire. And then again, because we don't know what's out there and what's possible, possibilities are out there, we did put in an option E for any alternative, or if a firm wanted to think outside the box and come in with a plan that might be prudent to them, and for us to take a look at that, we're open to take a look at any of the options, whether it's a combination or something, an alternative that they want to bring forth to us to review.
John, before you go any further, and because of the fact that we only got this draft tonight, Andre?
Yeah.
We have a contract in place with Rose Rainey that provides concession banquet management at the current Green Tree Golf Course. I handle her insurance.
You can't go.
No, apparently I only got this tonight, so there's no way I could have known that we were.
But you probably will be deemed to potentially have a conflict, at which point we need to go to the rule of necessity. And do we need to take action on this item tonight?
No, actually, the purpose of bringing it forward, typically we don't bring requests for proposals to the council until it's already been on the street, and we're bringing back the actual proposals with a recommendation. Because this is a significant change in operations, our purpose here tonight was just to get input from the council and to also inform the council as to what was going to be hitting the street as soon as we can get this thing finalized. This is a draft. There is still a little bit of work to be done on it before it's ready to go out. but we're not looking for the council now or at a future meeting to approve an RFP before it goes out. It would be something that would come back once we get the proposals back in and have a recommendation from staff on a final determination.
So Doug, what you're doing is you're going to put all of this out, the format?
Yes, this is only one.
whole format will go
This is
out?
only one piece. We actually have, this is roughly probably 1/10 of the paperwork that would go out.
No, but this would be in there.
Yes, this would be in there.
This whole proposal
Yes,
format.
this would be in there, and we've tried to make it as flexible as possible. And just, I'll come back to that once you've had a chance.
Then
to
Ryan, I
review it.
think it would be safe, the safer course of action, without looking closely at yours, would be to conflict you out. If you do have since apparently Rose Rainey's contract is part of this proposal and is part of that package, and then we have to take a vote on it, we'll have to do the rule of necessity and bring back a council member to the extent we need a vote on it with a quorum. So I would suggest that you recuse yourself as well.
I'll have a beer.
I'll join you.
As I mentioned, we're not looking for a vote on this item.
I don't understand this.
Yeah,
This is kind of silly.
Yeah, we're looking for input.
What you'll be doing is, if you go out with the proposals, it'll be each one of these you have listed here, and then you'll
Right.
Right.
get everything in,
Correct.
and you see which is the best one for us.
If
Exactly,
it's
we'd be
a
looking at
successful
whatever's the best
RFP,
interest.
we could see proposals for one or both golf courses for maintenance, one or both golf courses for operations, one or both for a lease. We've tried to make it as absolutely flexible as possible because this is a significant change in direction from our current practice, which is to be city-run courses. The cover sheet of this was actually the pro forma that's scheduled to go out with these so that the members of the public and the potential bidders are aware of what's been happening with the golf courses over the last couple of years. As you see, the last full year that we have, fiscal year 2009, it's approximately a loss of $850,000 at Green Tree and $463,000 at West Winds. And that's what we're trying to address, is there a way that we can somehow maintain golf courses in the city of Victorville open that don't cost this much money? And we'll see.
We do have one for West Winds.
We have interest at West Winds. We actually have recently had some interest at Green Tree as well.
Okay, what I'm getting at is that you have an individual for West Winds and someone for Green Tree.
Potentially,
But
yes.
you do, okay, potentially for both of them. But what I'm getting at is, why aren't we dealing with them? Is it because maybe the Green Tree management would be in conflict, or they would try and outdo one another? But they're so far apart from one another, Doug, is what I'm trying to say.
We probably will discuss those options with those folks, assuming they submit a bid. But rather than just dealing with only one entity who would not have any competitive proposal to compare against, we may be missing out on a better option. So the idea is Mr. Mendiola has identified, with the assistance of Mr. Gargan and his staff, several golf course management companies that do this throughout the nation, that we would submit these proposals to, or these requests for proposals to, and hopefully we'll get a lot of interest in the courses and be able to then negotiate the best deal for the city.
I think that these management companies would be interested in both golf courses at the same time, as opposed to just the Green Tree.
Potentially, yes, and that's why we want to make it as flexible as possible. There's 5 options listed. The 5th option really is a free-for-all. If you thought of something that we didn't think of, let us know. You know, maybe that's going to be better than anything that we originally thought of. And these 5 options also have sort of an A and a B option within them, that being proposed for Green Tree and proposed for West Winds, or both.
Yeah, there'll be separate proposal sheets on each of the options for both the Green Tree and the West Winds, just like Mr. Robertson
And
had
then
said.
if they want them both, it would be,
Exactly.
Right, so
And we'd be
theoretically,
able
we
to
could
take
get
a look at it.
one company who says that they would like to lease both courses and would pay the city X dollars in order to do that, guaranteed annually. We could get other proposals, one person who wants to lease Green Tree for X dollars and someone else who wants to lease West Winds for X dollars, and the sum of those two could be greater than the one that wants to do both. So, yeah, we would have to evaluate that as staff. bring all of that back to the council for
All
a
agreed, so
final
that's what I'm
resolution.
asking.
And hopefully by then, we'll have this
I want to
enough
know,
of a quorum to be able to vote on it.
no, I'm going to ask that. Andre, are you playing games? When this comes down for a vote and a decision, how are we going to work this?
What we have to do at that point is do the rule of necessity and basically draw straws between the conflicted members and have one of those members then come back for the purpose of, one, obtaining a quorum, and then two, voting on it. But at this point, when you've got three conflicts that, I mean, there are potential conflicts under the FPPC rules and the Fair Political Practices Act. Nothing I can do about it. You have a rule of necessity that we would have to apply if we need a vote on it and need direction from it.
It will still be majority vote.
And then it'd be a majority of the quorum. You bring one person back through essentially selection of straws to create the quorum, and then it's a majority vote of that quorum.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's the first. We've never run into this before.
So the loss was about 850,000, then
At Green Tree, yes.
This Green Tree alone,
and
yeah.
then 4, but it also shows 210, it shows like 129,000 for West Winds. Is that, what is that?
That's the maintenance of the course, because we knew that there could be some interest in, right. The West Winds was closed 2 months into the fiscal year, so there was some operations.
Oh, okay.
But then also, we're still maintaining it at a, at a
Because
lesser
if you
degree.
look at that, we just started 2010, what's it going to be at the end, you know? It's just, yeah. Well, I agree with sending out the proposals and see which one is the best. What we're trying to do is eliminate that loss at both ends. We can't,
It's going out.
we simply can't afford that anymore. That's it.
One thing that we're making sure in this is that it's clear that this is not a request for proposals for the concessionaire service. We have a current concessionaire, and much of the backup documentation talks about the fact that some of these items would be a negotiated item. So theoretically, if someone wanted to retain that person as the concessionaire, we would negotiate a transfer of that contract, something along those lines.
How long is your contract?
I believe it was a 3-year contract.
3-year contract
And it ends?
with multiple additional 3 years, and with a 90-day termination in case we do lease it out.
Yeah, but it's a 3-year?
Yeah.
But assuming that someone, got the proposal.
Yeah, if it's in their best interest to
they would have
propose,
their work.
and keep the current concessionaire because she's put all that capital improvements and
but
materials
these-
and everything and keep it flowing, just so that income comes in, then, yeah,
Yeah, then somebody may come in with their own,
correct?
so they could work out a deal with her in the end.
And we made a concerted effort to make it clear that you can't bid on just the concessionaire portion. That's not the
He's not
purpose of it.
interested in just concessionaires only.
Well, how long do you think this whole process?
We would like to get it out on the street literally within the next week or so, for a 4 to 6 week period, I believe, and with a goal to have someone in place in time for spring golf season to start up. Right.
Going to be a very detailed process where what they're going to submit is their financial pro forma data, what they're proposing and what their past history is financially. So we'll have somebody from the finance team take a look at it and make sure that they're capable of putting out the capital, what they need to do to take over or run it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5.
And then 5, we can bring the council members back.
I never gone back there.
I don't think you guys had a leave.
Okay. Item number 5.
Mr. Mayor and Council, there have been some discussions in regard to the City of Victorville issuing tickets for passes. I'm going to say that it's a small list. I looked at that list very, very recently. Also going to point out that the individuals that are recipients of those is mostly considered goodwill. And for the most part, none of those individuals ever use those passes. They in the past have been given to the legislators who represent the area, the senators, the assemblymen. I'm not sure, but I believe our congressmen have received those. The Fair Political Practices Commission has amended their rules to a large extent, and I'm sure that all of you have read that gifts or gifts that are received that you have to have a policy on, and also they must be declared depending upon why they were given or whether or not they become a gift or whether or not they become a supplement to income. It's the staff's goals to ensure that that even though this is a goodwill gesture for the most part, we have a responsibility to adopt a policy in regard to the distribution and have a policy that relates to gifts that may be given to the city or individuals. And as a result of those discussions, I've talked with our city attorney, who had spent considerable amount of time reviewing this for another entity, and he has put together a proposal that I've briefly reviewed, and I'd like to ask the city attorney to briefly discuss this proposed policy.
Council members, essentially this policy is in accordance with the requirements of the FPPC. New regulations came out in 2008, and as Jim indicated, it basically indicates that if in fact you receive a pass, it is not considered a gift if you are receiving it in the capacity of essentially official business. However, you still have to report the fact that you received the pass, and that report needs to also be made available now on the city's website. So it basically is a public information item, unless you also, it's not deemed a gift if you, on your own income taxes, declare it as income. So this is a policy that has been used in other cities that ensures compliance with the FPPC requirements. It still allows for the distribution of passes and tickets under certain circumstances, but just make sure that the individual receiving them either reports them as income, and that the city then keep track of that and report it on its official website.
I would like to add that these passes in the past have been from January 1 through December 31. I went over the list, and being aware, partially aware of the requirements to provide the FPPC with a notification that you received a gift, I was also surprised to find out that if you receive a card and you don't ever use it, you have no use for it, thank you very much, and you throw it in the drawer, tear it up and throw it away, the very fact that you received it, you have to declare it on the 700 form, which doesn't really make any sense. So an individual, you could give it to someone who says, oh, thank you very much, I don't play golf, I don't use it, I have no use for it. But you could be reported by someone that they got angry at you for some reason. The very fact you received it and didn't report it, you now have a problem. So being aware of that, I revised where the individual will sign and accept or reject. And I think to date everyone who can receive one has rejected it on that basis. But still, even for those who may accept, we don't have a policy for that. And therefore, after discussing it, we felt it's in the best interest of the city and the best interest of anyone that you might issue those to, that you have a policy that's in strict compliance with the law. And so this is what you have in front of the council for review. And if there's no objections, we will schedule this for adoption at the next regular scheduled council meeting, which is a week from tonight.
Good. It's a good idea, and we'll do that. But I tell you, this is, again, the silly season. This is the most asinine. For all the things in politics that you could get involved with in terms of corruption and crime and all the other things, a pass from a local agency to their boards and what have you is, I mean, if anything, you would want these folks to be out there as much as you can to see that facility. It's one of the best assets you've got in town, and you want everybody, all 5 council members, all board of supervisors, I don't care who, on these things. So this is, again, one of these overreactions. If I haven't got anything better to do, oh, let's do this. It sounds good to the public. There's nothing there.
This is how it starts, though, just a little thing, and somebody report us.
But it's a good policy. I think we need to have those
I
policies.
agree.
Well, it's certainly, I think we have an obligation, if you give a ticket to someone just as a goodwill gesture, knowing they're not going to use it, they knowing they're never going to use it, that's the end of it. They probably tore it up before they left the building, and then somebody sees it given, checks Form 700s and report it. And of course, anytime somebody files a complaint with FPPC, they must investigate it to determine was it given or not. If in fact a gift was given and it was received and not reported, that is the violation. It's not the fact that they didn't use it. So we decided we needed to really clarify this. And also there is, as we have given those, and I don't know the number, I think I had 10 or 12. According to the rumors, we give out hundreds of them. That's why we're losing money, is because we give away the spree golf. We don't. But you know how rumors are. So we might as well put an end to all of it, have the policy, get it all settled at one time.
Item number 6 is the emergency item, and we can get Terry back here. Just for ratification of the state of emergency declared by the city manager.
Can I ask Jim a question before he comes out? Jim?
I'm sorry.
On
yes.
these, no, I should ask Rudy if I can ask you a question. On this emergency item, can we list Bear Valley Road? Or is that just one of those things that it floods all the time? Because it was closed for a while because the water was all the way across.
Where we have had to be place employees on rotating shift and use equipment, manpower to clean up or repair items that causes a danger that's not the normal repair of the city, all of those get listed as a part of the emergency repair services and qualifies for reimbursement.
Because we repaired our own. We didn't even call it.
We called out, we repaired it, but you may have an area that every time it rains, you have sand that come in a low point, and then you have a big flood. Well, it's just stand on the low point. That doesn't qualify. But if the fact it tears out the roadway or a drainage system, there's a whole list of issues that are out of the norm that's caused as a result of the rainstorm, not just normal. And that was a very abnormal, very unusual rain. As you know, there's all kinds of damages. And I guess if you look at Apple Valley and Hesperia and Victorville, no one escaped. We all had major damages, and all have declared the emergency that existed, and all will now be will certainly be eligible to receive emergency monies.
Item number 6, the request to ratify the state of emergency declaration by the city manager.
I'll move the item.
Second.
If the council could take a voice vote on this item,
All those
because
in
it's not
favor?
on the agenda.
Aye.
Aye.
We'll now go into closed session. Andre?
Mayor Cabrianos, there are 3 closed session items. 2 pertain to potential litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9B. I made a determination that we are appoint in 2 items, 2 disputes where it is very likely that we will be in litigation. I need some direction with respect to that. The 3rd item is existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9A. The parties are CMB Export LLC et al. Versus the City of Victorville, case number CIVBS 901467. To the extent there is any reportable action on those items, we will come out and report it at the conclusion of the closed session. I am pleased to announce and excited to announce that there is reportable action as a result of this evening's closed session with respect to item number 7, the CMB litigation. The council voted unanimously to, one, provide a waiver to the firm of Green, Debonowski, and Quintanilla to provide for my participation in the litigation, both as the attorney on behalf of the city, and to provide a waiver so that I could, if necessary, become a witness in the case. The council also voted unanimously to get a retainer agreement from and retain Francis O'Meara with the law firm of Henshaw and Culbertson to come on as co-counsel in the litigation to represent the redevelopment agency. Conclusion of the reportable action.